Hey everybody, it's Preston D. Lee here from GraphicDesignBlender.com, the #1 place that freelancers and designers come for tips on building their business. And I'm super excited today because I'm going to be joined by Jonathan Wold. He's an entrepreneur, he's a freelancer, he's a designer, a WordPress developer, a blogger. He does tons and tons of awesome stuff. And today he's going to share with us more specifically how he finds clients, how he took his freelance business kind of from zero to amazing, and how you can do it too. So stay tuned because the best new show for freelancers starts right now. Hey everybody, Preston D. Lee here from GraphicDesignBlender.com. I'm super excited today because I'm going to be joined here by Jonathan Wold. And Jonathan is an entrepreneur, he's a freelancer, he's a blogger, he does lots and lots of cool stuff. And he's going to share some of his secrets with us today on how he builds his business and kind of the projects he works on, that sort of thing. So welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thanks, Preston. It's good to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Why don't you start off by telling us just a little bit about who you are and what you do and what kind of projects you work on and what makes you tick.
Wow. Well, I have been a sort of a lifelong entrepreneur, and about 6 or 7 years ago, a little bit more than that now, about 8 or 9 years ago, I started experimenting building websites. I found out that I could do it and that people would actually pay for it. So over the past about 6 or 7 years ago, I decided to make a career out of it. I just started out as a freelancer, and I'll tell you a little bit about where my clients came from, et cetera, a little bit later on. But yeah, when I started out, I didn't think I'd really be all that interested in web development from a business perspective. But as I got into it further and as I just experienced sort of the joy of seeing creations come to life, and then I actually really enjoy working with clients as well. So I have built a specialty around working with WordPress, which has really been yeah, when I first got started, I really couldn't do, there wasn't all that much I could do. And when I found WordPress, it's all of a sudden opened up these new realms of opportunity that just weren't possible before that. And then I said, wow, I can actually offer more, and I can do these things I couldn't do before that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I remember now. I don't normally promote posts on, I guess, competitors' blogs or whatever, but I remember reading a post on freelanceswitch.com that you wrote, and the title was something like, and I'm going to slaughter it here, but it was something like how to make $5,000 plus a month designing websites part-time or something, and it went into using WordPress as kind of your tool to build sites for clients and that sort of thing. Can you kind of break down, I guess, the biggest tips and kind of the gold nuggets out of that blog post for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the backstory behind it is that I've been doing web development all this time, and it was about this was last year actually. This took place. My wife and I were living in Oklahoma at the time, and we had about $26,000 worth of debt, and we wanted to get out of debt.
Yeah.
And I've been doing web development for a long time. I very much had these sort of ups and down cycles, very much the feast and famine, and I never felt like I was slacking off or anything. I just felt I was sort of, life was just kind of going on, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we want to get out of debt, and everything clicked. And one of the things I really kind of bring out in the article, and what I really kind of emphasize here, is that all of a sudden I had this intensity that I didn't have before. And so I started looking at things. All right, well, first off, what can I do with my existing clients? I went back out to some of the ones I've done work with in the past, and I said, how can I serve them more? So I focused on that, and I got really intense. I took on projects that I might not have otherwise taken, but at the same time, I wouldn't have taken them before because I can't make much money on that. So at the same time as I took them, I also looked at I don't have much time. How can I make this more efficient? So I found that when you have a really clear goal, which is really kind of what it boils down to, we had an exact dollar amount.
Yeah.
And it came down to it, we actually went on the Dave Ramsey show, sort of our inspiration for getting out of debt. We were almost $1, and it was a day before. Everything kind of lined up. I mean, I'm having clients, hey, can you wire me the money? And if it came down to it, I said, hey, we're about to get out of debt. Can you send the check a bit earlier? And so everything just kind of lined up, and I said, wow, when it was all said and done, to step back and say, whoa, I just saw what could be accomplished if I'm really focused on something.
Yeah.
It's kind of the heart of it. Like, there's a lot of specifics to it, and there are a lot of great questions that came out in the comments, and I still got some more to answer there. But the heart of it is that when you're intense about something, and I didn't have a whole lot of time either. I spent an inordinate amount of time, but I didn't have a whole lot. And so the key takeaway from that is really when you have something that's really worth, when something's really worth it to you, you have to know what you're working towards. And then there's this intensity, and it wasn't. I didn't always feel it. There were a lot of times I just got to keep going, even though
You
you'll
gotta
have,
push through.
but you just have to keep going, and that's definitely the key. Staying focused and being intense about it.
Well, that's awesome. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like all these entrepreneurs, web entrepreneurs, successful freelancers that we hear about that are making pretty good money online. It seems like a lot of them lost their job or whatever and kind of forced into the situation, or a lot of them, all of a sudden we're going to have a family and they realized that they couldn't get by on their current income, so they came up with more solutions or whatever. What would you say to people who maybe kind of want to take it to the next level, like you had mentioned, but they don't really have, I guess, for lack of a better word, a life crisis that can kind of get them there? How would you say they should motivate themselves and find that intensity deep within them to kind of take them to the next level?
That's a good question. First, you have to decide if you really want it. I mean, some people, like, I've been thinking about this as I'm talking with people about building their businesses, and you have to first figure out what you actually want. Are you just trying to build a comfortable income? You do have to figure out what is it that's motivating you. And most of us want more money. There's most of us can figure out, we want to meet this goal, or we want to do this, or whatever it is. So I mean, that's an okay motivator. It's a good one. But you have to figure out what is it that you want. Maybe it's you're working towards security. You don't really know if what you're doing now is going to last. You have to be kind of careful with that one. It can be self-fulfilling. If you're worried that you're going to lose your job all the time, well, you could end up losing your job. So it's a good question. They have to really decide if they want it, and that just takes some time, because if you don't really want it, it's not going to get your best efforts, and it's not going to get. And really, I think it takes a degree of sacrifice. If you're going, like, for instance, what I recommend cases is that if someone does have a job, they should keep it. They should really excel at it and work to put their best into it. But if they want more than that job, they need to A, do well with that job, but B, they're going to have to sacrifice something. They can't sacrifice the job they have currently. So they may have to sacrifice some hobbies. They may need to work together with the family and decide, okay, well, I'm going to work, on the weekend, or whatever it's going to be. But if you're going to make that eventual break and do something that you want even more, you have to know that you want it, and then once you know that you want it, it's going to take sacrifice. Is really the bottom line, and that's, I think, where if you're willing to do it or not.
Yeah, for sure. I heard some advice recently that just super simple advice, and we've heard it in a bunch of different ways, but basically, if you really want something, no one in the world can stop you from getting it, and I think that's true. It's got to be all about the passion, right? And you got to love what you're doing. I also love that you don't condemn freelancers or entrepreneurs who have a 9-to-5 job or a full-time job or whatever. I'm that way, and I know that a lot of people kind of frown on it or whatever. But my 9-to-5 job actually lets me do what I am even more passionate about. I'm passionate about my 9-to-5 job for sure, or I wouldn't be there. But it allows me to do what I'm even more passionate about, and that is building audiences online, being online, helping people out, and that sort of thing. And so that's really cool. I had another question about you mentioned you were going to talk a little bit about finding clients, and your Freelance Switch post kind of talked about it, and also the post that you wrote for Graphic Design Blender touched on. Your post was about rookie mistakes, and it touched a lot on things that you would or wouldn't have done with clients. Can you just tell us kind of about how you've built a client base? You've kind of built it from ground zero, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And tell us kind of how you got there, and how you picked your clients, how you know if they're a good client or a bad client, and what kind of clients you look for, and that sort of thing.
Well, this is a good question. I've wrestled with this because I think I'll tell you the backstory. There was the first phase in my web development experience, and I had clients from a couple different means, and that's where I got my very first clients. But at that point, I hadn't really decided that I wanted to do web development. It was just sort of, they wanted it. Okay, great, we're moving along. My timeline's a little fuzzy right now, but a couple of years after I started doing web development, and this was probably about 6 years ago now, I said, okay, I'm gonna start treating this serious. I did a couple of things. I rebuilt my site, my personal site, and at the time, I didn't actually have. I remember one of the very first clients who contacted me. They found a WordPress tutorial that I had written. This is now almost years ago. An early tutorial I'd written on how to integrate WordPress into an existing website. And one key point I want to share about that particular tutorial. At the time, it was cutting edge, and there were folks who told me that, hey, you're giving too much away here. People said, hey, you should be charging for this.
Yeah, you're stealing our business. You're stealing our secret sauce.
And I was like, first off, I didn't really care at the time because that wasn't what I was focused on. But as I thought more about it later, and what I saw is that by putting my best out there and basically giving it away, like I detailed it to the point where it established me as an expert on that particular topic. And the very first client I got was someone who said, hey, could you do this for us? And I said, I guess I could do that for you. And I gave them a price, and I did it for them. And then right after, another one came and said, hey, could you do this for me? And so around that time is when I rebuilt my site. And so, okay, so now fast forward, most of my clients came from those articles that I wrote earlier. I wrote 2 WordPress tutorials early on. The majority of my clients came from them. I've kind of wrestled with this because now I'm thinking a lot more about client acquisition and how you get clients. And what I did then is not easily reproducible. At the time, when you were for WordPress integration, and I think I still rank relatively well for that, although it dropped, there was nothing else out there. And I got a lot of traffic from that for a long time. So I got a lot of business that came from that. Now, over the years, there's been a shift as clients that I got from that have turned into repeats, and then sort of the referral base has somewhat grown from that. So that's really, if I were to step back and say, okay, where did my business come from? In the first couple of years, it was primarily because of my writing early on, the content that I produced. And then as I got clients, I focused really hard on doing good, and that's led to referrals. When I got out of debt last year, most of it was from going back to clients that I'd met who had a lot of work and saying, hey, I'm making myself available to you. And I would do all sorts of stuff for them, keep coming back and keep working. So good. Well, I got a chunk of, if I were to try to guess, about half of it was current clients back. The rest was new clients that came along during that period of time. So all that comes back to, I said, okay, well, that's well good for me. But how is that useful for somebody who is, just getting started, who doesn't have, and if they went out and wrote an article or a tutorial right now, the problem is, unless they put in the right, it's not easy to get read. Yeah. Because there's a lot. So I wrestled with this, and I'm challenging myself to try some new things. I have that, pipeline, so to speak, from my writing, and I'll continue to develop that over time. I get business for my work for Smashing Magazine, and that's something I'll continue doing. But so that's okay, that's good for me over here, but that's not a path I just recommend. I mean, it's a lot of work, and it's not. There's people who are perfectly qualified to build really good businesses who don't need to go that route. So one of the things I've been thinking about, and I wanted to. This is actually I've been developing this week. I live near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which has a population of a little over 40,000, and the majority of my work historically has been entirely remote. So, most of my clients I've never met face to face. Most of them I've talked to on the phone, but I have a couple. I have one client who's fantastic. I've done 3 projects with him now, and still never spoken with him on the phone.
Wow. And
that's kind of a shock to some people, but so people have asked me, "Hey, can I do this remotely?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can do this remotely." So I'm now challenging myself with the reverse. I live in a place where there's a lot of businesses. Coeur d'Alene's a good-sized town. There's a lot of them, a good-sized city. There's a lot of them out there, and here's the as I see it, the bottom line. businesses here in Coeur d'Alene, I've only lived here a couple of months. The problem that I have and that they have, from my perspective, is that I don't know them and they don't know that I exist.
Yeah.
So it's a relatively simple thing that, when the people that work, past clients, they know I exist, and especially if I've stayed in touch with them. So I said, okay, well, what can I do here? And there's a lot of different things I could do. Could, I'm a very, I'm not the, how would I put it? I don't get really excited about sales. I'm not the kind of, I don't like knocking on doors and trying to sell something.
Yeah.
That's just not,
You're not a
not really my,
salesman.
I much prefer and I've made sort of light of it somewhat in the past. Like the majority of people that I work with come to me.
Yeah.
I've only had a small handful of projects that I've gone after, and they haven't gone, and they did okay. But like I realize when someone posts a project up on Craigslist, which is one of the ones I did in the past,
Yeah.
I'm not the one responding, and it's an inherent switch, and like just a whole different strategy and effort than someone emailing me and saying, "Hey, are you available to do work?" I like that.
Yeah,
So
for
now,
sure. You've kind of already proven yourself when they come to you, right? You know that there's at least a little confidence in the fact that they like your work and that they trust you, if they're coming to you. Whereas if you're going to them, you have to start from zero and convince them that you're amazing, right?
exactly, and there's just something inherently troublesome about it. And from my perspective, and because I've done it, I know people who've done it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but there is when I can pick, I would any day rather someone contact me first.
Yeah.
So the key, how in the world to do that, and from a basic level, and I'm thinking about specifically from a local perspective, because I think that's going to be the most valuable to folks is say, okay, most people live near a place that has businesses and organizations that could use their services. And the challenge is that, do you know them? Anything about them? Have you connected with anyone in those businesses or organizations? And do they know you exist? And in most cases, the answer is no. And for me, especially being just a brand new move to this area. So I've been thinking about what I can do. And, there's a couple of things. I could call everyone on the phone. I could try and sell my services.
Right. Same old, same old.
And I'm not really, I've talked to some folks. I was talking to one guy who's doing it. And I think he's actually, he sent out 100 letters from the right off the get-go. And he wasn't sure, he didn't know, at first didn't get any response, but he got one response. And that may have turned into a project for him. So I'm like, wow, yeah. I've done that too in the past and didn't get any responses.
Yeah, right. Been there.
So here's my idea. What I was thinking of doing is I have my web development skill sets, and what it boils down to is I want to figure out a way that makes sense that I can get to know local businesses and organizations. So I came up with the domain cdaviews.com. The CDA is the abbreviation for Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
cdaviews.com, and my strategy is in its simplest form to take all of next year and try to do one interview a week where I will contact, and I'll start with my church here and some of the people that I know that are business owners in the area. And I started to a local networking event, and so I'll work with them. And basically my very simple. There's no sales aspect to it. It is to say, okay, let me get to know them, and in getting to know them, let me use my talents and capabilities to build a website. And really, it's challenging work because you're figuring out the right questions to ask.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Present about them and everything. But let me do something that's interesting that actually, puts them up there and is of value to them. And oh, by the way, they got to know me and that I do web development.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me add for the listeners too, kind of a similar idea that worked really well for me, and it's pretty similar to what you're saying, but I actually like your idea better, so I'll give you that credit for sure. But one thing that I did quite a while ago when I was trying to get in touch with people locally, potential clients locally, I made up this little booklet, which sounds so old school now, but it actually worked pretty well. And I made up a little booklet, and it sat on countertops in businesses all around, and it was basically, I can't remember the title, but it was something like, 10 elements that your business website has to have to succeed, or something like that. And I just noticed that potential clients were picking it up left and right because everybody, of course, wants to know how to make their website more successful. a lot of the small businesses couldn't figure out how to turn their websites into successful e-commerce sites and collect revenue that way. And so it set me up as an expert, kind of like what you were talking about, as a website developer and someone who could help them take their website to the next level. And it was a fairly inexpensive thing that I could do. Didn't take me that much time, didn't take me that much money, but it brought me quite a few clients. So I think it's kind of along the same lines. You got to reach out and lift them up and kind of help them find the worth in what you do, the value in what you do, and then it seems like a pretty seamless connection to take it to the next level and start a business relationship together. Does that sound kind of what you're getting at?
And I've been so my first one of the keys I want to make to this too is that there is definitely a proactive aspect of it. Like if I just go in, interview them, and walk out, I mean, I'm missing like there's an investment involved in this. So I do have to take the opportunity. Like if they have a website, I'm going to look at it.
Right.
Give them feedback on it. Give some suggestions.
Yeah.
The other I like about what you mentioned there, after just a little bit of time, for someone, let's say someone today starts to become a web developer. After spending just a little bit of time, the amount of knowledge that they have, if they just spent a couple of hours over a couple of weeks, the amount of knowledge that they have, especially if they pick good materials, is going to be quite a bit higher than the average business owner or the head of an organization. So they already have things that they can share value, especially if they've gone out, like if they got a course or they pick some good resources, they can learn very quickly. So they have something of value to offer, even if they don't have the technical skill sets yet. And that's one point that I think is really important to make for folks who are just getting started. Your technical skill sets are less important than your ability to understand the business objectives of a potential client and be able to meet those objectives. It doesn't care how well you know HTML or any of the skill sets that are important. They don't really care. Some of them may, but the really care about is the objectives. What is your accomplish them? And in the early on, and that's key to my success thus far, is identifying how to connect with the client, understand their objectives, and be able to suggest that they didn't even think about, because this is what I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
in fact, there was a post recently on Graphic Design Blender. You might have seen it. I've been reading lately. Actually, I just finished How to Win Friends and Influence People. Killer book. For the listeners, if you haven't read it, I'll leave a link in the description of this video. You got to check it out. It's an old book, pretty old book, but it's a wonderful, wonderful book, and amazing advice for entrepreneurs, but just kind of for people in general. Anyway, one thing that I really took away from the book was the importance of listening to your client or your potential client. I mean, I always knew it was important to listen, but the book talks about really making their opinion or their objective, as you said, Jonathan, the most important thing to you. And I think that's killer advice, that you got to go in and you got to figure out what they're trying to solve, what problem they're trying to solve, what objectives they have, what business objectives, and then as soon as you fill that gap and offer ways to solve their problems, I think then it's a shoo-in.
And those are the types of questions you have to ask them too. Like some people are, I mean, I did this early on. It's like, well, what kind of color do you want your website to be in, or what kind of a logo can we make for you? And those are valid things to talk about. Although I recommend shying away from the color conversation. But you have to ask them is, what do you want this website to accomplish for you? How do you know it was a success? And when you gear the conversation that way, you're focus on your value as well, which is also an important discussion. When you're talking about the objectives and what you're going to help them accomplish for your business, you can move away from hourly rates and be able to put prices that are based on value. You mentioned I wanted to bring up a point. One of the articles on stop trying to find new freelance clients is I went through that, and I like the point that you brought out, and you could share afterwards for folks. It's one of the recent articles on Graphic Design Blender.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the link in the description.
The point of focusing on the existing clients, and I think that has definitely been, I wrestled with that because part of my business early on has really been volume. Like a lot of my projects were relatively low dollar, which was good. I got a lot of experience very quickly, but it's important. It really important to nurture the relationships and just to check back in. I mean, and you set processes up to do it. But there's, taking good care of your existing clients like without a doubt, my best referrals, my best new clients have come as a result of referrals, either more work from an existing client or referred by someone that I'd worked with in the past. So in client acquisition, that is definitely one of the big things to focus on is serving your customers well. As exciting as it is to get that new lead, and I know the feeling, as excited as to go through that process, you have to make sure you're taking care of the people who've already paid and who you made commitments to.
Yeah, and that's a great point for anyone out there who hasn't read the article. Like I said, we'll link to it, but yeah, I've far too many times seen designers and just freelancers in general. They don't have to be designers necessarily. They neglect their clients, or once a project's done, they kind of just let it go and they start from zero. And I just think it's a huge mistake. You took so much time to build a relationship and do great work, and then you just kind of toss it aside and start from zero. I just think it's tough to do that. And so, yeah, I agree. My business is run the same way. My best referrals, I can't think of the last time actually that I had a new client, to be completely honest with you, because I have enough business coming in from current clients or referrals that I stay busy and I get done what I need to get done. So awesome advice. Can I ask you another question? In a lot of the things you've talked about, you obviously are a huge fan of WordPress development, using WordPress to build sites or enhance sites for your clients. Why such a big fan of WordPress, and why do you recommend it to up and coming designers, or do you?
I do. For me, and as I've grown, because I'm very interested in programming, so I've learned a lot more about programming, and I do a lot more programming work now. From the beginning, what WordPress helped me do, like it helped me leverage the thousands of hours that had already gone into it at that point, and accomplish things that I just would not have accomplished otherwise. My skill set has always been pretty broad, not very deep, and now I'm adding depth to my skill sets. But in the beginning, I understood a lot of different things, and I've been helping going deeper on some things. But WordPress helped me just do things that I couldn't do otherwise. And as my experience has increased, that's really only scaled. Now I can do more with WordPress, and to where I can't think of much that I can't do with it.
Yeah.
So what it really kind of boils down to, and it's not so much what WordPress has going for it is the ecosystem that's built around it. Like, for instance, if Forms, like Gravity Forms is a fantastic plugin, and there's others like it's the best in my experience.
Yeah.
It's I can do some really complex forms in just a few moments, where it does take a whole lot of time to try and figure out from scratch. So I'm a huge fan of WordPress, and I think it has a lot going for it. Key, though, is that it is a system that gives you leverage and enables you to be able to accomplish things from an objective perspective that really what kind of boils down to is that it's really about leverage. Because if you take one person who could maybe do a bunch of stuff because they have the skill sets, it's a lot more time than it would this other person over here who may not have that same skill set, but they're able to leverage existing tools.
Yeah.
And each one, arguably could be accomplishing the exact same objectives for a potential client. And they could even be charging the same amount. The client, so much to the client, it's accomplishing the objectives. Now, I am definitely it's important to develop skill sets. Pushing on towards mastery in something is really important to me. I think you need to let it be led, though, by a focus on accomplishing the objectives for your clients, not so much on saying, well, I got to go out and learn this skill set first, or I got to go do this and do this. And WordPress and systems like it, but WordPress being the best that I've found, just allows you to accomplish so much with a relatively low overhead on your part in the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of freelancers think they have to be, just the most amazing in their field to even just get started. And obviously, like you said, you want to aim for that. You want to be the best that you can be, obviously, and you want to be better than your competition. But you don't have to be amazing right when you get started. You just have to start. You just have to have the passion, and you have to know how to leverage existing systems and assets, like you said, Jonathan. You just have to know how to leverage those. I think it's more of a brain power game when you get started than a skill set game. And knowing how to help clients reach their objectives regardless of what your actual skill set is.
Exactly. And to that, what I'd add is when folks started, you really have to think you're doing your client a disservice if you're not thinking about how can I best meet their needs.
Yeah.
And the answer is not, like, if you want to get into web development, the answer is not enroll in a class at your local college to learn Dreamweaver. That's not how you're going to meet your client's objective. That's not how you're going to be. That's not how you're going to meet their objectives and serve their needs.
Yeah.
When you say, how can I be of most value? I mean, you could even be taking one of the free publishing tools out there, like Wix.com or some others, that are steps below what you can accomplish with WordPress. If that's going to help your client accomplish their needs, they can pay you to go set that up.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
There's so much. The skill sets are really important, but you have to take a step back and say, how can I, what are their needs, and how can I help them meet their needs, and then pick the skill sets that are going to line up with that.
Right. It comes back to another post, and sorry to reference so many posts on the blog, everybody. We'll leave the links in the description, like I said, but it reminds me of another post we recently we had on Graphic Design Blender, and there were two posts actually. One was basically, what does your pricing strategy say about you as a freelancer? And then there was a follow-up to that, just a short little one that basically asked readers, where do you fall on the spectrum of, from artist to designer, or better put, from artist to entrepreneur.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think there's a lot of designers, especially that they get this bad taste in their mouth when you say, hey, go to Wix.com and set up, a site through Wix, through a template, Flash no less, and as long as it accomplishes your client's objectives, then hey, not a big deal. I think there's a lot of people that cringe at that a little bit, but I think that's the real secret sauce to being a successful freelancer is you gotta keep in mind not only your client's objectives, but also your objectives. If it's cheaper and quicker to get something done and it accomplishes the objectives, and obviously you can't do something that's going to leave a stain on your reputation, right? So as long as it doesn't do that, and you're accomplishing both your objectives and your clients', I say you do whatever you need to do to run a successful business. That being said, I think you always need to be taking it to the next level. I think if you're a Wix site developer for your whole career, I think maybe you missed out on potential opportunity, but I think it's a great place to start for sure.
Yeah, and things like it. I mean, it's what happened. The tools are going to change all the time.
Right.
I think,
yeah.
the stuff will rotate all the time, and that's why it's important to not get caught on one thing or the other.
Absolutely.
Asking the questions. Say, okay, what are their needs? How can I serve those needs? You go out and figure out the solutions, and not tying yourself down to, oh, I got to do this. And I think part of it's a mentality. It's a mindset, very much so. In my mind, growing up, there wasn't really anything I couldn't accomplish if I set my mind to it.
Yeah.
So, and that's I think an important thing to have to say, if you spend the time listening to your client and spend your time trying to understand them, you can go out and find the answers, and you can ask. I mean, if you don't know, you can ask people who've had more experience, and you can, again, you're leveraging what's already out there. I think that's, if you get that right in the beginning, everything else is added on top of that, and you're going to have a good foundation.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's the big takeaway from today is whether you're getting started or whether you've been doing it for years, you got to focus on your client's objectives, and you got to focus on what you need to get out of your business, and you need to leverage assets that already exist to build your business as well as you can and build a foundation that you can really build a business on. You mentioned asking questions to people who may know more than you, who maybe had a little bit more experience than you have, and maybe this is a good time to wrap up the interview a little bit and ask you who you would recommend as far as entrepreneurs, freelancers, maybe bloggers, or certain books you've read, or that sort of thing, where the listeners can get some more advice on the things we've talked about today. Any insight?
A couple of books that have made an impact for me and resources. Start with the books. I really like EntreLeadership by Dave Ramsey. It's an excellent book. It's very much sort of a fundamentals, and of course it doesn't tie in directly to web development, but that was definitely a winner for me.
Yeah.
Very, very practical, common sense, and especially if you're just getting started, especially if you don't have a quote-unquote entrepreneurial background, and you're going into this is a very entrepreneurial direction. It's really important to make sure you have a good foundation. So EntreLeadership was an excellent book. I recently read Platform by Michael Hyatt, and that was also a very good book about the key takeaway from that is that as you're working with your clients, it's really important, and I mentioned this in the Freelance Switch article, to create a wow experience. like to really, really focus on that. And platform is a great way. It also introduces you, if you're new to social media and some of those things, it sort of introduces you to it from a principal perspective. More specific to the industry, I really like what you're doing with Graphic Design Blender. Encourage people to continue reading that.
Thanks.
Looking at some of the others, the competitor, Freelance Switch has some pretty good things sometimes.
For sure. Absolutely.
Uh, it is important I think it's important to stay on top of the industries. Like Smashing Magazine is great. Like it's important to know what's going on.
Yeah.
If you don't specialize in something, even if you don't have a skill set, you should be able to know about it and be able to, like, it's really about planting seeds. So when a problem comes up, you say, oh yeah, I remember reading something about that. I can go look into it further.
Right, for sure.
I found a podcast. Let me see if I can get the reference here. It's the guy who wrote a book called Double Your Freelancing, Double Your Freelance Rate. He started the podcast with a guy. What is that called? I found it just today, so I'm a little bit. It's just freelancing.com. I just started some of their podcasts, and it's a little bit. It's more. They focus kind of more on taking your freelance business to the sort of the next level.
Yeah.
It's important at the beginning to sort of surround yourself with resources that are going to have you thinking. Like they're dealing with things like being able to keep 100K a month coming through.
Wow.
Be able to, a good sized team. But I think it's important to be thinking further ahead and let that sort of trickle down to what you're doing now. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I've found is to look for the folks that are a couple levels up, so to speak, and see what they're talking about and let that sort of trickle down. So those are some off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would hope that what we've done today here with you can do that for people who are just starting out or who are they've done it for just a few years, but they're still looking to kind of take it to the next level. I think this will be great advice for them. So enlighten us. Where can we connect with you? Tell us. Here's shameless plug time. You can tell us where people can connect with you, how they can follow you, how they can stay in touch if they want to be in touch with you, that sort of thing.
My website's a good way, jonathanwold.com. I'm not very active on Twitter right now, but I do occasionally post things that are meaningful there. I'm working on a course right now to teach what I've put together about web development. It's going to be a little while. I have a small group of people that I'm working with on that right now, but it's something I very much enjoy. So if you want to kind of see what I'm doing, getting my course, and which I will officially am planning to launch in January, but I'm not tying myself to it entirely. So I really like teaching. I really very much like this industry, and one of the things that I'm really focusing on is saying, okay, if I've given an example, like I have a free course on jonathanwold.com called 4 Weeks to Your First Client, and one of my favorite lessons on there is 15 strategies for getting new clients, and I've done all but 2 of those strategies in detail. And the ones that I haven't done yet is the ones I'm working on. So, all right, let me get some experience there too. So I like to lead by experience and have done something already. So those are some good things. And I'm always, if you ever have questions, howdy@jonathanwold.com. I love answering questions, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Perfect. Sounds good. I'll definitely endorse too those courses that come, as you subscribe to your blog. I've read through a few of them, and excellent stuff. So I highly encourage everybody to check that out. It's jonathanwold.com, right?
Yep.
Great. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate the insight, the advice. I think it was killer.
Absolutely. It's been fun. Thank you.
And I got to say, for everybody listening right now, we're just kicking off these video interviews. They're going to be amazing. More and more people like Jonathan who can kind of guide you through your freelancing and your entrepreneurial journey. What I gotta say is, I'm not gonna ask for this very often, but you gotta share this video, you gotta like the video, and you gotta spread it as much as we can, so we can get the word out on these videos as much as we can, and we can keep them going as long as we can keep the word out. So go ahead and share the video with your friends, post it on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you want to share it with people, and we'll get the word out. I think this was great advice. Thanks again, Jonathan. We'll talk to you soon.
Do it. You gotta share it.
See you, man.
For now.